Hello friends, I am Ram and today I am going to be telling about types of launch vehicles. Hope you enjoy the show. Please like and subscribe. So friends, during our our country's vast space projects, we have made many satellites and many rockets. Our country's space program is known as ISRO, Indian Space Research Program. It has developed six main types of, of launch vehicles. The the first two were experimental and then the other ones were developmental. So friends, the first experimental vehicle we had was known as a satellite launch vehicle, also known as an SLV. Its first launch in 1979 failed and was partially successful, but the second launch in July 1980 successfully placed the first Rohini series rocket into orbit. Then, with the added knowledge of the satellite launch vehicle, we started making an we started making an augmented satellite launch vehicle. The first two launches in 1987 and 1998 failed. Only two further launches placing scientific experiment satellites to orbits were in 1992 and 1994. After that, we started making experiment developmental satellites. These were the Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle, known as the PSLV. It was created in 1993 but was unsuccessful. And then from then on, there were many usages of a Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle was successful to bringing many satellites to orbit. Then we went even further with the modern geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle, a very powerful one. It took its first flight in 2001, two more in 2003 and 2004, then went haywire, and many people started using this rocket because it was cost efficient and very useful for ISRO. Then we have the geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle Mark III. It's India's most powerful rocket to date. So friends, after that, let us discuss about some of the history of launch vehicles and satellites. Let us start with launch vehicles. In 1960s, there was widespread usage of space knowledge and there were many institutions. At that time there were no rockets. But once in 1963, we started borrowing rockets from other countries such as the USSR, also known as Russia, and USA, so we could learn from their rockets and make our own rockets. In 1970s, using soundings rockets, we decided to start the Rohini series. With the added knowledge of other countries' sounding rockets, we made our own rockets, and the first one of those types was SLV number 3, also known as Satellite Launch Vehicle number 3. From then on, with the added knowledge of the satellite launch vehicle, in 1990, 10 years after the satellite launch vehicle number 3 was made, we made the ASLV, also known as Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle. Then the Indian Research Space Organization made many other developments. In 1993, 3 years after Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle, we made our first developmental launch vehicle, which was the PSLV, Polar Satellite Launch Vehicle. At that time, we also learned indigenous launches. That means we could launch our own satellites with our own rockets. But we never launched communication satellites until GSLV came, because it was the only rocket powerful enough to lift that kind of stuff into orbits. After that, we had the improved version of GSLV 13 years after GSLV, that is the GSLV Mark III, right here, friends. Let us talk about satellites now. And friends, satellites and launch vehicles are very different. Launch vehicle is the thing which puts whatever you want into space. It is the main part of the rocket. Satellite is the thing which goes to space. So friends, again a recap. Launch vehicle takes the satellite to space. So in 1960s, we borrowed other people's rockets and satellites and researched them. In 1975, we made our own satellite called Aryabhatta, and it was launched by foreign launch vehicles, also known as launchers at that time. In 1980s, we started the Apple series, the first experimental communication satellites. But we did not continue it because SLV and ASLV were experimental. So we couldn't really rely on them to launch our satellites. So we had to wait until PSLV came out to start launching satellites. But we did not launch any other communication satellites due to the fact that very powerful rockets like the GSLV could only launch satellites communication satellites to the specific area in space. So from 2001 on, we stopped relying on foreigner technology and used our own technology. So friends, hope you enjoy the video. Please like and subscribe the video.